what I had realized for myself is not that I can't take time off or that I can't ignore the inbox or refuse to reply on the vast majority of things that come in. What I simultaneously have realized is that over the last, say, 10 or 15 years, there has been a creep of complexity. So when you have dozens of different entities, like LLCs and so on, when you have hundreds or at least 100 different investments and funds and capital calls and this, that, and the other thing, and you've added people to your organization so you have more headcount, there is a certain amount of complexity that comes with that. So while there are a million emails I feel like I can safely ignore, there are certain others from whether it's a tax authority or some registered agent or an employee that I do feel like I should keep track of, or there will ultimately be some consequences to ignoring those things. And so this is a very roundabout way of asking how you have seen people either reframe the complexity so that it has less of a fearful impact on them, or reduce complexity in a way that lessens this sort of internal drama that they experience going along with it.
I love the way you frame that question. And there are tips and tricks and hacks that you can do to reduce the complexity, but the complexity will creep back. And I think you know this because you've experienced this, and we've had conversations over the years about that tension between those two spaces. I hire an assistant, and then all of a sudden I need 2. And then I need 5. And now they need to be responded to, right? And it goes. And so let's take us all the way back to one of Jerry's very, very famous questions, which is, how have I been complicit in creating the conditions I say I don't want?
I like that you just referred to yourself like the Hulk uses the third person.
Hulk mod.
Yeah, Hulk smash. Jerry ask
question that caused fear.
How am I complicit in creating the conditions I say I don't want?
Right. And so I'm going to alter that just slightly. What benefit do I get from the conditions I say I don't want? What benefit do I get from the conditions I say I don't want? And so let's turn it back to the question. So you create these really complex structures, and you probably spend an enormous amount of energy sorting them out, responding them, maybe even use autoresponders, tax person go here kind of thing. So if you want to alter that behavior, you have to understand what the benefit is to you.
Right. The payoff or the secondary payoff.
That's it. What's the secondary payoff? What's the secondary benefit? And for you, what does it make you feel like living a very complex life with hundreds of investments and lots of fingers in multiple pies and doing all sorts of things? What does it do for you?
So I've thought about this, and I would say that I think the complex structures are a side effect of something else. I don't think that I actually get much payoff from the complicated structures, but I think they're a symptom. And I would say that for much of my life, I had competitive athletics and other things that consumed, in a very good way, I think, a lot of my focus and provided a lot of excitement. Just as important, excitement. And I haven't had that in a very long time after a shoulder reconstruction and then elbow surgery and twisted SI joint and all these things. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I don't need to get heel hooked today. Maybe I don't need to get thrown on my head in judo class this week. And I've stopped a lot of that. And I think in lieu of that, I enjoy competition. I enjoy it. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that.
Mhm.
I actually really, really enjoy competition. And I think I'm a good competitor in a lot of ways. So I've shifted the arena from sports and all these other things, art, although I haven't treated art competitively, but these activities, and substituted in investing.
Mhm.
And I've substituted in different types of projects that often have some creative component. Almost always they do, whether it's deal structuring or a podcast episode or a preloading podcast that I can do A, B, and C elsewhere. But very often, I would say the investing side in particular is related to excitement. I would say that's what I get from it. And the side effect of having lots of investments and lots of things that come along with that is this complication, the complexity, and the systems.
That makes sense to me. What's the opposite of excitement?
Opposite of excitement would be boredom, which is why I wrote down this hot and cold boredom for you that you mentioned earlier. I think it's boredom. I think it's, and I'm not, I used to be more maybe optimistic about this. I mean, I am sure fundamentally it comes down to not wanting to be alone with my own thoughts and certain feelings that might come up, right? So the question of, what is it that you're unwilling to feel?
Yeah.
I think it was Tara Brach who said, one sage said, there's only one question that matters. What are you unwilling to feel? And I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. I've spent a lot of time working on that. And I've also arrived at a point where I've looked at my family. I went to a family wedding recently, and I'm like, okay, this could all be nurture. Maybe it's just behaviors that have been passed down the bloodline. That's one explanation. It could also be that our code, our DNA, just leads us to have a certain baseline of anxiety or depression or any number of other things. And maybe I'm exerting a lot of calories trying to prove to myself that that is not the case.
Tim, the thing that occurs to me every time we talk is how much self-work you've done. And I'm going to make you feel really uncomfortable because I'm really fucking proud of you.
Thank you, Jerry.
You go there. So we're going to go there. The proclivity towards anxiety could have a genetic component here. But the proclivity to be uncomfortable with what the Buddhists would call hot boredom is not DNA. It's, to use the term from my first book, it's a subroutine. It's programming. It's nurture. And you said, kind of offhand, but really with a kind of self-awareness, okay, so I'm uncomfortable perhaps with boredom because I don't like to necessarily be alone with my own thoughts or to face those things. And God bless you, you've done a fantastic job of learning to deal with your own thoughts. So let's imagine, if you will, that the learned behavior was boredom bad. Hulk, boredom bad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the learned behavior may just as equally have been the family saying, we don't want to actually be with these questions. We don't want to be alone with our thoughts collectively.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we're alone with our thoughts, bad things happen. So let's get busy.
Yep.
And let's make sure that we're competitive and complicated and busy with lots and lots of different things so that we don't have to feel those things over here. To go back to Tara Brach, family systems can reject feelings, not just individuals.
Yeah.
Right. It reminds me of I remember sitting with a group of executives at a company, and they asked me to just observe their executive team, and I was watching, and something came up. It happened once, it happened twice, it happened the third time. And what it was anytime that there was a really moment of tension, somebody would make a joke and the whole energy would dissipate. And when I called it out, the CEO said, that's just like my Sunday afternoon family dinners. And sometimes we get really complicated and busy because we don't actually want to feel what those thoughts bring up. And there again is a reason why sabbatical can feel really challenging.